were injured and I became blind. On that day he swore to the heavens that he would be my eyes for the rest of our lives, never leaving me, never giving up on me. I threw myself into treatment, clinging to the hope of recovery. The day my vision returned I was overjoyed. I rushed home eager to share the good news with him, to see his face when he heard it. But when I opened the door, the world I thought I knew shattered. There in our bed was Jerry, wrapped in a passionate embrace with his secretary Kelly. Their lips pressed together, their bodies intertwined. "Kelly," he gasped between heavy breaths, her name dripping with longing. "Kelly," her voice cut through the air like a dagger. "Jerry, why don't you divorce that blind woman? I'm the one who truly understands you, the one who really loves you. Just give me more time," he replied, his tone pleading as if he were the victim in this twisted story. That night, a bitter snowstorm swept through the city. I stood outside, the icy wind biting through my thin clothing, numbing my skin. But it couldn't touch the ache in my chest. The void where my heart used to be. By morning, I had made my decision. I booked a flight back to my hometown, determined to disappear from his life forever. Jerry would never find me again. He had made his choice, and now, so had I. After booking my flight, I naively thought the two in my bed might stop their sordid affair. But when I returned home, having forced my emotions back into place, I walked in on a scene even more obscene. They had moved from the bedroom to the living room, locked in a fervent embrace, kissing as if the world around them didn't exist. The air was thick with the unmistakable scent of lust. Jerry's desire-filled eyes flicked toward me, and for a moment, he bit his lip as if to stifle any sound. Kelly, on the other hand, seemed to revel in the situation. She teased him relentlessly, her voice dripping with mockery. "Jerry, relax," she whispered, pressing her lips to his ear. Then she shot me a disdainful look, her sneer cutting through me like a blade. "Anna's blind. She can't see us." Jerry pinched her playfully, his tone hushed but firm. "Stop it. She can't know. Oh. But doesn't this just make it more thrilling?" Kelly giggled, clearly enjoying the game. She then tilted her head back, her voice low but pointed. "Jerry, we're out of condoms. The new box is on the table." Her words hung in the air like poison, and Jerry hesitated. He glanced over at me, sitting motionless on the couch, my heart breaking in silence. Then, with a barely audible sigh, he murmured, "Should we ask her to bring them, or should I get them myself?" Kelly smirked and turned her gaze on me, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Why not let Anna bring them over? I'll save you the trouble." Jerry hesitated, visibly torn, before finally nodding. "Anna," he said, his tone casual but betraying no guilt, "I think I might have a fever. Can you grab the medicine for me from the table?" I froze, staring at him, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the couch. His cheeks were flushed, his eyes half-lidded with desire. His arms stayed firmly wrapped around Kelly, as if he couldn't bear to let her go for even a second. Swallowing hard, I forced myself to stand. My face was ashen and my legs felt weak, but I walked to the table, my hands shaking as I picked up the box they called medicine. It was condoms, plain as day. My chest tightened and I bit my lip to hold back the wave of nausea and despair. "How bad is your fever?" I asked, my voice trembling as I clutched the box. "Do you need to see a doctor?" My concern was hollow, a vestige of a love he had already killed. But he didn't notice the tremor in my words. "It'll be fine," he said, his voice casual as though nothing was out of place. "I'll take the medicine and rest." Kelly, meanwhile, was toying with him, her fingers tracing lazy circles on his chest. Jerry smirked, enjoying her touch, before gesturing for her to stop. He reached out to take the box from my hands. "You should get some rest too," he said lightly. "I'll sleep in the guest room so I don't pass anything on to you." And with that he scooped Kelly into his arms, carrying her toward the guest room. Their whispers and laughter faded into the distance, leaving me alone in the stifling silence of the living room. I stood there for a long moment, my mind blank. Then, as the sound of their muffled moans seeped through the walls, tears burned in my eyes. I had already decided to leave him. Thought I was ready. But the pain still clawed at me, sharp and unrelenting. Jerry had once sworn never to lie to me, never to betray me. But now his promises lay shattered, just like my trust. Reaching for my phone, I dialed my father's number. His voice was warm, familiar, a lifeline I hadn't realized I needed. "Dad," I said, my voice cracking. "I want to come home." He paused, startled by my sudden declaration. "Are you sure? Our little town is so remote. Once you come back, I'll be like cutting ties with the rest of the world." Can you really leave Jerry behind? I can, I said without hesitation. There was a long silence on the other end of the line before he finally spoke. All right. Come home. I'll be waiting for you. Hanging up the phone, I glanced toward the closed door of the guest room. The sounds inside had only grown louder, more shameless. My lips curled into a bitter smile. For years, I had wasted myself on someone who didn't deserve me. But now I finally saw the truth. Jerry's betrayal had made the decision for me. Dad, I whispered, as if he could still hear me. Thank you. I'll see you soon. Just as I ended the call, Jerry walked into the room buttoning up his white shirt. His neck and chest bore fresh marks, scratches left by Kelly's nails in the throes of their passion. He didn't bother hiding them, why would he? In his mind, I was blind, incapable of seeing the evidence right in front of me. But I had never seen more clearly in my entire life. A wave of nausea hit me, stronger than anything I'd ever felt. My stomach churned violently and I doubled over, dry heaving as bile rose in my throat. Jerry noticed my reaction and rushed toward me, his face full of concern. But as he got closer, the sickly scent of Kelly's perfume enveloped me. It was unmistakable, her signature fragrance, one Jerry had spared no expense commissioning from a high-end perfume house. He spoiled her so much, he had her own scent custom-made. The stench was unbearable. My stomach turned again and I shoved him away with all the strength I could muster. Stumbling, I fumbled my way toward the bathroom, keeping up the pretense of blindness. My body was revolting, rejecting his presence as much as my mind had already begun to. Inside the bathroom, I collapsed by the toilet, gagging as my body tried to expel the disgust festering inside me. After a few moments, I steadied myself, my breathing ragged. That's when my gaze fell on the trash can. A pregnancy test at IT was there, lying on top of the garbage, its bright red double lines staring back at me. I froze. For what felt like an eternity, I just stared at it and it stared back, mocking me. The humiliation sank deeper into my chest, suffocating me. Jerry and I hadn't been intimate for over 6 months, not since I lost my sight. It didn't take much to piece the rest together. Jerry had turned to Kelly. And now she was pregnant. The door creaked open and Jerry's panicked voice broke through my daze. Now what's wrong? Are you sick? His arms wrapped around me from behind, holding me tightly. I got so worried when you pushed me away like that, he murmured, his voice trembling. His hands gripped my waist as though he feared I might disappear entirely. Just minutes ago, this man had been tangled in bed with another woman. Yet now he played the role of the devoted husband, his voice dripping with concern. His performance was flawless. Jerry, I thought bitterly, you should win an award for this. I pried his hands off me, putting distance between us. It's probably just my stomach acting up, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I've been having trouble keeping anything down lately. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Once I would have despised someone who lied so easily. But now, here I was, becoming the very kind of person I once detested. Jerry's face tightened, a flicker of alarm crossing his features. He, who was always fastidious, didn't even flinch at the thought of touching me, despite the remnants of my earlier sickness still clinging to me. Instead, he pulled me close again, his grip firm but desperate. I am so sorry, he whispered. I've been working so much lately, I haven't had time to take care of you. That's my fault. It's all my fault. He cupped my face, his brow furrowed with what looked like genuine guilt. Then he led me back to the bedroom, grabbing fresh clothes for me to change into. When he tried to help, I stopped him, taking the clothes from his hands and dressing myself. For the first time since our marriage, I didn't let him take care of me. He froze, stunned, as though the realization hit him like a blow. I climbed into bed, pulling the covers over myself. Jerry hesitated, then gently tucked the blanket around me, his every move careful, almost reverent. Anna, he said softly, are you mad at me? Do you blame me for not spending enough time with you? He paused as if searching for the right words. Tomorrow's your birthday. I'll take the whole day off, no work. Just us. I promise. This was the same man feared in the business world, ruthless and sharp. Yet here he stood, humbled, pleading for my forgiveness. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. Was this a blessing, or was it the greatest curse of my life? Exhaustion overtook me and I drifted towards sleep. Just as my consciousness began to fade, I heard his phone buzz. Jerry quickly silenced it, calling my name softly to check if I was awake. When I didn't respond, he answered the call. You're such a tease. Kelly's sultry voice purred on the other end. You ripped my panties to shreds. Now come back and bring me a new pair. Jerry chuckled, low and indulgent. I'll be there in a minute. He glanced at me, his expression soft, even tender. Gently, he brushed his hand against my cheek before standing up and leaving the room. I clenched the bedsheet in my fists, the tears I had been holding back breaking free. Kelly was still here. Still in this house. Jerry hadn't even tried to hide it. He must have thought it didn't matter. After all, I couldn't see. I told myself. It's okay. Just hold on a little longer. He'll be gone. And when I leave, this will all be over. Forever. The next morning, I woke to the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of clinking dishes. Jerry had woken up early and prepared a lavish breakfast. All my favorite dishes, neatly arranged on the table. He even brewed my favorite coffee, placing it before me with a warm smile as he handed me a fork. Take your time, darling, he said softly, his tone filled with affection. Across the table, Kelly sat with a pout, clearly displeased by the scene. Jerry, unfazed, picked up his phone and typed a message in plain view. I'll make it up to you later. Don't cause a scene in front of Anna. Whatever you want, it's yours. Satisfied, Kelly's expression shifted into smug amusement. She cast a disdainful glance in my direction before standing up from the table. As she passed Jerry, her fingers grazed his shoulder in a playful gesture before she left the room. I ignored the fork Jerry had offered and instead reached for my coffee. Jerry mistook my silence for sulking, but he didn't press. After breakfast, he insisted on taking me out. He had rented a yacht for the occasion, inviting a crowd of friends to celebrate what he called an extravagant birthday party for me. On the way, Jerry held my hand tightly as though afraid I might trip or fall. His words were a steady stream of nostalgic recollections, recounting the sweetest moments of our past together. But I said nothing. Inside, my heart churned with bitter irony. I had once believed in forever, in growing old together, but now that belief felt like a cruel joke. Jerry thrived on excitement, on novelty, on youth. He had long forgotten the vows we exchanged on our wedding day. When we boarded the yacht, the sight awaiting me was almost absurd. Rose petals, fresh and vibrant, blanketed the pathway, their crimson hue vivid against the polished deck. I hated roses. Jerry knew that. Kelly, however, adored them. It was painfully clear who the roses were meant for. How laughable. A birthday party supposedly planned for me, but every detail whispered her name. Anna, Jerry began, his voice trembling slightly as he pulled me close. Do you remember? This is where we got married. I wanted the whole world to know just how much I loved you. His emotion seemed genuine, a rare crack in his otherwise composed demeanor. A single tear slid down his cheek and he lifted my hand to touch it, as though the act could bridge the chasm between us. It might have. If he hadn't betrayed me. If I didn't know about Kelly. For a fleeting moment, I felt the weight of his love, or at least what it once was. But that moment passed. The man before me was no longer mine, his love divided, tainted. I pulled my hand away, my expression calm, unreadable. Jerry's gaze faltered, hurt flashing across his face. But it didn't last long. His eyes lit up again and a faint smile tugged at his lips as he glanced toward the deck. Kelly approached, wearing a custom-made dress that hugged her figure perfectly, radiating elegance and poise. Jerry had chosen that dress for her, tailored to his desires. Beside her, I felt plain, unremarkable. Happy birthday, Mrs. Dean, Kelly said with a saccharine smile. Her tone dripping with feigned courtesy. She sauntered over to Jerry's side, ignoring the crowd around us. Her hand slipped into his, fingers intertwining with an intimacy that left no doubt about their relationship. Everything's ready, Mr. Dean, she said, glancing at Jerry with a playful grin. Shall I count us down? Jerry nodded, his attention fixed solely on her. 1, 2, 3. At her cue, the night sky exploded with fireworks, vibrant and dazzling, their colors painting the darkness in brilliant streaks of light. The display was breathtaking, but I barely noticed. What caught my attention was the writing in the sky, carved out in shimmering letters by the fireworks. Kelly, her name burned brightly, etched into the heavens. Not mine. This wasn't a celebration for me. It was hers. The party, the roses, the fireworks, it all belonged to her. The realization pierced through me like a blade. Jerry leaned toward me, planting a kiss on my forehead. Anna, I need to step away for a bit. There's something important I have to take care of. Stay here, okay? His voice was warm, gentle, as though nothing was amiss. Before I could respond, he called over a maid, instructing her to look after me. Be good, he said with a soft smile, brushing my cheek. Then, without another word, he turned to Kelly. As I watched their retreating figures disappear down the hall, I made a split-second decision and followed them. I stopped at the door, my breath catching in my throat. Inside, Kelly straddled Jerry, their lips locked in a fervent kiss. With a swift movement, Jerry flipped her beneath him, pinning her down as their bodies melded together. "Good thing Anna can't see," Jerry muttered, his voice low and breathless. "You really shouldn't have pulled a stunt like putting your name in the fireworks." Kelly laughed, her hands clawing at his shirt, tearing it open. "What are you so afraid of? She's blind. She can't see anything." Their voices grew muffled as their breathing turned heavier, more urgent, until the sounds dissolved into a chaos I couldn't bear to hear. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone, opening the camera and pressing record. For as long as they carried on, I stood there, frozen in place, listening to every sordid second. My stomach churned with disgust and heartbreak. Eventually, Kelly's energy waned and she collapsed onto Jerry, her head resting against his chest. But Jerry wasn't done. His hands tightened on her waist, pulling her back into his rhythm. It was too much. I turned away, fleeing the scene, stumbling blindly back to the house. When I arrived home, I stood in the middle of the living room, my breathing shallow, my mind spinning. This time there was no doubt. No hesitation. I was done. I slipped the wedding ring from my finger and hurled it into the trash. Then I moved through the house, gathering every photo, every memento, every item tied to Jerry and our life together. Out in the garden, I dug a deep pit, tossed everything inside, and lit a match. The flames roared to life, devouring our memories in an orange blaze. My eyes remained cold and dry as I watched them burn. "Jerry," I whispered, my voice steady, "there's nothing left for us anymore." When I returned to the bedroom, Jerry burst in, drenched in sweat, and panic etched across his face. Relief flooded his expression as soon as he saw me. "Anna, why did you come home alone? Do you know how dangerous that was? You scared me half to death." His voice trembled with genuine fear. As if he truly cared. I offered him a small smile. "You were gone too long and I got scared. So I asked the maid to bring me home." Guilt flickered in his eyes as he pulled me into a tight embrace. "Anna, that's my fault. Make it up to you." I promised. I said nothing. Over the next few days, Jerry stayed by my side constantly, as though trying to prove his devotion. But I remained quiet, withdrawn. On the 7th day, he suggested we go for a walk. Halfway through, his phone rang. "I have to take this," he said, apologetic but firm. "It's work. It'll only be a minute." I stopped him. "Jerry, before you go, I need you to sign something for me. It's a document, I can't see it, so I need your help." Without a second thought, he took the pen and scrawled his signature on the page I'd prepared. "What is this?" he asked distractedly. "Are you buying a car? A house?" He reached into his pocket and handed me a blank check. "Here, take this. Get whatever you want." Before I could reply, he was already hurrying off to meet Kelly. He didn't even realize had just signed our divorce papers. Watching his retreating figure, I took off my sunglasses and let my eyes follow him. "Goodbye, Jerry," I whispered. When I returned to the house, I placed the signed divorce papers on the dining table, along with my phone containing the recorded video. I took one last look around the house before picking up my suitcase and walking out the door without a second glance. Meanwhile, Jerry rushed to the hospital after Kelly called, claiming she was injured. When he arrived, he realized it was another one of her lies, a minor cold blown out of proportion. Annoyed, Jerry glared at her. "Stop being so childish." But as he turned to leave, the doctor who had treated me appeared. Mr. Dean, the doctor said, his voice tinged with concern, "Is Anna okay? I hope there haven't been complications with her eyes." Jerry froze, confusion etched on his face. "What do you mean? Complications?" The doctor hesitated, then explained. "Anna's vision was fully restored 7 days ago. He was so happy. She said she couldn't wait to tell you the good news and ran out of the clinic to find you." Jerry's knees buckled and he slumped against the wall, his face drained of color. 7 days. 7 days she could see. 7 days she had been watching. Panic and fear swirled in his eyes as he shoved past Kelly, stumbling out of the hospital and racing home. I had just arrived at the airport when my phone buzzed. "Who is Jerry?" "Anna, you can see now, can't you?" His voice trembled, unsteady. As if the words themselves were too much to bear, I stayed silent, letting him stew in the realization. Are you home? If you are, turn on the TV, he pleaded. The answer is there. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the live feed from the house's security cameras. Just as I suspected, Jerry had rushed back home. Earlier, the doctor had called to ask why I hadn't told Jerry about my recovery. ID only offered a bitter laugh in response. Now, through the camera, I watched Jerry collapse onto his knees beneath the dining table. His eyes were red, brimming with tears. His whole body trembling. He reached for the remote and turned on the TV. The screen lit up with images, photos of him and Kelly in compromising positions. They were explicit, shameless, impossible to deny. Jerry grabbed his phone again, his voice breaking as he spoke. Anna, you've been able to see this whole time, haven't you? Why didn't you tell me? A laugh escaped my lips, cold and bitter. My gaze hardened as I answered, did you ever give me a chance to tell you? The day I came home ready to share the news. I walked in on you and your secretary tangled in bed. You broke every promise you made to me, Jerry. You let her into our home, let her carry your child, and you think I owe you an explanation. My voice grew steadier, firmer. You've already signed the divorce papers. It's over, Jerry. We're done. I never want to see you again. No. Jerry shouted, his voice raw, desperate. I won't divorce you. I'd rather die than lose you. But you already signed the papers, I said flatly. This morning. In fact, you didn't even bother reading what you were signing before you rushed off to meet Kelly. Stop fooling yourself, Jerry. You've already chosen her. So who are these tears for? I watched through the feed as Jerry's gaze dropped to the contract on the table. Recognition dawned slowly and the color drained from his face. His lips moved soundlessly as though trying to form words that wouldn't come. Finally, he crumpled, tears streaming freely down his cheeks. Anna, he sobbed, his voice barely above a whisper. I was wrong. Please, where are you? Tell me where you are. And I'll come get you. I'll fix this. I'll do whatever you want. I'll make Kelly end the pregnancy. I'll cut all ties with her. Anything, Anna, just don't leave me. He knelt on the floor, his voice breaking, pleading with a desperation that once might have pierced my heart. But it didn't. Strangely, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no pity. Just emptiness. I've already let you go, Jerry, I said quietly. The boarding announcement echoed through the terminal, signaling the end of our conversation. Jerry's voice grew frantic on the other end, begging, pleading. But I didn't listen. I hung up, pulled the SIM card from my phone and tossed it into a nearby trash can. Without looking back, I walked toward my gate. The journey to my hometown was long, nearly 2,000 kilometers. 2 flights later, I finally arrived. As I stepped off the plane and breathed in the crisp, familiar air, I felt a weight lift from my chest. Jerry was behind me now, a closed chapter in a story I would never revisit. This was my fresh start. Our village's entrance is hidden, tucked away in the dense greenery. Finding it is no easy task. And even locals sometimes struggle to describe the way. Years ago, I decided to venture beyond its borders, eager to see the world outside. As I stepped out of the familiar woods, I stumbled upon Jerry. He was pale, writhing on the ground, a snake bite swelling on his leg. The venom had begun to take hold. I saved his life that day. When he woke, he offered me money in gratitude, but I refused. I simply wished him well and left. We met again by chance. This time, a group of thugs tried to snatch the necklace my mother had left me. Jerry happened to be driving by and saw me struggling. He stepped in, shielding me, and sent them running. Realizing how little I knew about the world, he took it upon himself to teach me, showing me things I'd never experienced. I was captivated first by his kindness, then by him. Over time, admiration turned to love, and I thought he felt the same. The night I worked up the courage to confess my feelings, Jerry was attacked by old enemies. They were out for blood, and without thinking, I threw myself in front of him, taking the knife meant for his heart. That was the night I lost my eyesight. Jerry held me in his arms, his tears soaking my face as he begged me to stay alive. Outside the operating room, he wept through the night, kneeling on the cold tile floor, praying for a miracle. When I woke, he swore to never leave me. He promised to be my eyes if I could no longer see. But that Jerry is gone. He's no longer the man I saved, nor the man who held me and cried for me. As I arrived at the village entrance, my father was waiting. His familiar figure, weathered but strong, brought a lump to my throat. I ran to him, burying myself in his embrace, the safety of home washing over me. Anna, he said softly, you've finally come home. He pulled back, searching my face with furrowed brows. But are you sure about this? Can you truly let go of Jerry? His voice was heavy with doubt, but I answered firmly. Is that? It's over. Whatever bond we once had, it's gone. There's nothing left to regret. I paused, drawing in a deep breath before continuing. He let Kelly carry his child. If I stayed, what would that make me? A bystander in their happy little family? I gave him countless chances to make things right, to salvage what we had, but he only pushed the boundaries further. He left me no choice. My father sighed deeply, his expression a mix of sadness and relief. Perhaps this is just another chapter of life, a lesson learned. It's not all bad. The fact that you've woken up and found the strength to leave is already something to be proud of. He placed a hand on my shoulder, his grip steady. You're still young, Anna. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Don't waste it on someone who doesn't deserve you. You deserve so much more. His words sank in, their weight grounding me. He was right. I was only 30. My best years were still ahead of me, waiting to be lived. From now on, I wouldn't squander my energy on people who didn't matter. I wouldn't allow my life to be consumed by pain and betrayal. This was the beginning of something new, a fresh start. A brighter future. 3 years slipped by like a fleeting shadow. My life had been quiet and uneventful. But the wounds in my heart gradually healed, smoothed over by the passage of time. For the first time in a long while, I felt light, unburdened. I never expected to see Jerry again. Yet here he was, standing at the entrance of my hometown. He had found me after 3 long years of searching. The moment his eyes met mine, they turned red with emotion. Dropping his suitcase, he sprinted toward me, closing the distance in an instant. Before I could react, he pulled me into a tight embrace. This wasn't the same Jerry I had known. Once the ruthless and decisive CEO, he now looked worn. His sharp features etched with worry and regret. I finally found you, he choked out, his voice breaking. 3 years, Anna. I've spent 3 years searching for you, nearly the whole world over. His words dissolved into sobs, his grip tightening around me as though he feared I might vanish again. I let out a cold laugh, steeling myself as I shoved him away with all my strength. The force sent him sprawling to the ground. If it had been anyone else, Jerry would have flown into a rage, demanding retribution. But now, he simply looked up at me, panic flashing in his eyes. Did I hurt you? He asked anxiously, scrambling to his feet. Anna. I'll be more careful next time. Jerry, I said, my voice cutting through his frantic apologies, there's no need for this. Whatever we once had, it ended long ago. Please, for both our sakes, let it go. No, Jerry said, his voice rising as he stood. I can't let go. Even if it kills me, I won't let you push me away. Before I could stop him, he reached for me again, his lips crashing down on mine. My hand moved before I even thought, striking him hard across the face. The sound echoed between us, sharp and final. Don't you dare. I hissed, glaring at him. I have no tolerance for cheaters. You betrayed me. You let another woman carry your child. You're filthy, Jerry. Absolutely filthy. He recoiled as though struck again, his eyes wild with desperation. I got rid of the baby, he shouted, his voice cracking. Kelly's gone. I sent her away for good. I'll never make another mistake, Anna. Please give me one more chance. Let me make it up to you. His words washed over me, leaving no impression. My heart didn't ache. It didn't even flutter. I pulled my hand from his grasp, cold and steady. Jerry, I said, turning to leave, I don't love you anymore. Whether you believe me or not, my future will never include you. Jerry's expression crumbled, the light in his eyes extinguished. His legs buckled and he nearly collapsed to the ground. Tears spilled freely down his face as he cried out, his voice raw and broken. You're lying. You can't let me go. Look me in the eye, Anna. Look at me and say it. He grabbed my arm, his grip desperate and unyielding. I raised my head, meeting his gaze with unwavering resolve. I don't love you, Jerry. Not even a little. Now, Mr. Dean, I said, my voice cold and formal, can you let go of me? His hands fell away, trembling as he backed away, tears streaming down his face. When you left, he whispered, I felt like my heart had died. I searched for you everywhere, refusing to give up. I told myself I wouldn't stop until I found you. And now that I have, you don't want me anymore. He wiped his face roughly, trying to compose himself, but his steps were clumsy, faltering. Anna, he called out, his voice hoarse, I'll give you time. Please think about this. With that he turned and ran, his once confident stride now unsteady and desperate. He stumbled several times before disappearing from view, leaving behind only the faint echo of his sobs, and I stood there unmoved, ready to face the life that lay ahead. Jerry didn't leave. Instead he moved into the house next door. He didn't harass me, nor did he directly approach me, but I could feel his presence everywhere. He followed me from a distance, lurking like a shadow. I pretended not to see him, and no matter what he did, I didn't spare him a second glance. He couldn't reclaim the heart that had stopped loving him. Still, he persisted, trapped in his self-deception. One afternoon I was catching up with Mike, a neighbor I'd known for years. We sat on the porch, laughing and reminiscing about the past. Our conversation was light and cheerful, but Jerry, spying on us from nearby, misunderstood completely. Consumed by jealousy, he stormed over, his expression thunderous. Without a word, he raised his hand, ready to strike Mike. I stepped in, grabbing his arm before he could do something rash. "Jerry," I snapped, my voice cutting through his fury, "if you're going to act like a madman, then leave. Stop interfering in my life." Mike, clearly uncomfortable, quickly stood and said goodbye, retreating to avoid the escalating tension. Once he was gone, I shoved Jerry away, my disgust plain on my face. But he caught my wrist, pulling me back, his eyes searching mine with an intensity one no longer found moving. "Anna," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, "you've had a few days to calm down. It's time to come back to me. Let's leave this place together." I frowned, disbelief curling my lips into a bitter smile. Did he honestly think these years apart were just some petty Cold War between us? "Jerry," I began, my tone laced with exasperation, "did you hear a word I said? We're divorced. I don't love you anymore. Can you leave now? Or is that too hard for you to understand?" I couldn't help but laugh, a sharp, humorless sound. "I'll never forget the day you stood naked in front of me, making love to Kelly while I stood blind and helpless. I'll never forget how you asked me to fetch you fever medicine, only to find out it was condoms for her. And how could I forget the fireworks you lit for my birthday? Fireworks that spelled Kelly's name in the sky, not mine. Do you even know how disgusting you are, Jerry? To betray me so brazenly and then demand I come back to you? You wanted excitement, didn't you? Well, now you get to live with the consequences." Every word I spoke was a knife, each one sinking deeper into his chest and twisting. Jerry's face contorted in agony, his breath shallow and uneven. He looked as though the pain was suffocating him. Before I could stop myself, I raised my hand, ready to slap him again, but before it could land, Kelly arrived. So much for Jerry's claim that she was gone. Another lie. Kelly looked exactly as she had 3 years ago, her presence as infuriating as ever. She hadn't changed, and neither had Jerry. "Go ahead," Kelly sneered, her voice dripping with venom. "Try hitting Jerry. If you do, I'll make sure you regret it. Not that it matters, you're practically a useless wreck already." Before I could respond, Kelly stepped forward, her expression darkening as she turned to Jerry. But I cut her off. "Should I lock the door before I deal with dog?" I said coldly, my eyes narrowing. "You bitch, go to hell," Kelly said angrily. Jerry's voice cut through the tension, low and sharp. "Kelly," he said, his tone venomous, "shut your mouth." Kelly froze, stunned by the sudden shift in his demeanor. "She called you a dog, didn't she? Well, she's right. That's exactly what you are, my dog. You were foolish to think you could replace the person I actually care about." Jerry /as words hit Kelly like a slap. Her face twisted with rage, and she turned to him, ready to lash out. But Jerry didn't stop. "I warned you," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "I told you never to show your face here again." Then he slapped Kelly. Kelly clutched her reddened cheek, staring in disbelief at Jerry, who now glared at her with cold hatred. Not long ago he would never have raised a hand against her, never spoken a harsh word. But now, for me, he had crossed that line. "Anna, don't listen to her," Jerry said, his voice shaking with urgency. "I won't let her hurt you. I swear, 3 years ago, I cut all ties with her. I've been telling you the truth. I swear it." His explanation fell on deaf ears. I wasn't interested in hearing any more of his lies. I kept my expression neutral as I spoke, my tone calm but cutting. "Please, both of you, get out of here. Don't come back to Miaojiang. There's nothing more to say." Jerry's face turned ashen, his brows knitting in frustration. But Kelly wasn't about to leave quietly. Her eyes blazed with fury, and she grabbed a wooden chair from the floor, swinging it toward me with reckless force. Jerry stood frozen beside me as I yanked him aside. narrowly dodging the sudden attack. Anna, you should just die. Kelly shrieked, her voice a crazed wail. She grabbed a glass vase, hurling it in my direction. I'd had enough. Ducking to avoid the vase, I moved swiftly, crossing the space between us in seconds. My foot connected with her stomach, sending her sprawling to the ground with a pained cry. Oops, I said coldly, my foot must slipped. Kelly doubled over, gasping for air, her hands clutching her abdomen. Anna, she growled, her voice a venomous whisper, I'll kill you myself. Jerry finally seemed to snap out of his stupor. He grabbed Kelly by the hair, yanking her head back as he leaned in, his expression twisted with rage. If you dare lay a hand on her again, he spat, I'll make sure you regret it. Kelly's bitter laughter filled the room, tears streaming down her face as she mocked him. Jerry, how heartless you've become. I gave you everything, didn't I make you feel good? And now, the moment we're out of bed, you pretend you don't know me. Another slap echoed through the air as Jerry's hand connected with her cheek. Shut your mouth. He snarled. But Kelly wasn't done. She turned her gaze to me, her words dripping with malice. We did it right in front of you, Anna, she hissed. Jerry couldn't even hold back. He enjoyed every second of it, even when he had to keep quiet. I didn't react. My calm, unbothered demeanor seemed to frustrate her even more. Stop pretending you're above this. She shouted. You're furious, aren't you? Just admit it. I smiled faintly, shaking my head. You should worry about yourself instead. I wasn't holding back when I kicked you. How's your stomach feeling? Turning to Jerry, I added. If you still want this trash, she's all yours. We're divorced, after all. Jerry's face crumpled at my words, his shoulders sagging as his nails dug into his palms. For once, he was feeling the agony I'd endured. I sighed, finding the scene in front of me tiresome. I turned to leave, but Kelly's voice stopped me. Jerry, don't let her go. She screamed. I'm the only one who truly loves you. Her words dissolved into a scream of pain. She clutched her stomach. Her face twisted in agony as she crumpled to the floor. Jerry's foot had connected with her abdomen in a violent kick. It's your fault, he growled, his voice shaking with fury. You're the reason Anna left me. You ruined everything. Kelly whimpered, scrambling backward as Jerry loomed over her, his expression terrifying. I'd just stepped outside when I heard her cries for help. For a moment I hesitated. Then, against my better judgment, I turned back. What I saw stopped me cold. Jerry stood over Kelly, a knife in his hand. His eyes wild and unhinged. Blood dripped from the blade as Kelly lay limp on the ground, barely conscious. Jerry, stop! I shouted, my voice cutting through his frenzy. If you kill her, you'll go to prison. He froze at the sound of my voice, slowly turning to face me. His face was splattered with blood, his expression a mixture of madness and exhaustion. She said she wanted to kill you, he said simply, his voice eerily calm. I took care of it for you. You don't have to worry anymore. I stared at him. A storm of emotions swirling inside me. Jerry dropped the knife and approached me slowly, his movements deliberate. Anna, he murmured, his voice trembling, can you hold me? Just once more. Something in his tone made me pause. Against my better instincts, I nodded as he rested his head on my shoulder, his body sagged with fatigue. Anna, he whispered, his voice breaking, I'm so sorry. For everything. For all of it. Before I could respond, the sound of footsteps thundered through the house. A group of police officers burst in, their guns drawn. Jerry was quickly forced to the ground. His hands cuffed behind his back. No. He screamed, struggling against them. Don't stop me. Anna was going to hug me. Why are you stopping us? Let him go, I said quietly, addressing the officers. He won't hurt me. Jerry stilled at my words, looking up at me with pleading eyes. I took a deep breath. Jerry, this is the last time. I'll hold you one more time, but that's it. The officers allowed me to kneel beside him. As I embraced him, he broke down, his sobs tearing through the silence. I am sorry, he said over and over. His voice barely audible. I deserve this. All of it. When they led him away, he kept looking back, his gaze fixed on me. As the police car disappeared into the distance, Mike appeared at my side. Are you okay, Anna? He asked gently. I nodded, offering him a faint smile. Thanks for calling the police. You did the right thing. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving Jerry behind for good. This time it was truly over. Goodbye, Jerry. Months passed after Jerry was taken away. The chaos he brought into my life slowly faded, leaving only silence and peace. I returned to my routines. The quiet village life, soothing the scars of the past. Jerry wrote letters from prison, but I never opened them. His chapter in my life was closed, and I had no desire to revisit it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold, I stood at the edge of the garden, breathing in the crisp air. For the first time in years, my heart felt light, unburdened. The pain, the betrayal, and the love that once consumed me, everything was behind me now. Jerry was part of my past. But my future, it was mine alone, and I was ready to embrace it. And that's my story. That if you've made it this far, thank you. That I hope my journey inspires you, even just a little. If you have thoughts to share, leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. There are still many more in spring stories like mine for women.